they say. Look for the truth and swallow your pride, for things that you thought that didn't exist, that you might find. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, dear viewers, to a brand new series titled The Pool of Ideas. And I'm your host for the program, Junaid Dar. Dear viewers, as the title suggests, our discussion on this series is talking about ideas, or isms and schisms, or let's be more precise, ideologies. And it's very important for us to understand the variety of different ideologies that are floating around the world today. Dear viewers, in this series we have chosen a selected types of ideologies, looking at Arab nationalism, looking at Zionism, looking at secularism, but looking at really ideologies that are affecting not just the Muslim world but the world at large. But what is unique, what is beautiful about this series is the fact that we're not just going to be looking at these ideologies in a comprehensive manner, but we're going to be tying them together with Islam. How do they fit under the Islamic umbrella? Are they welcoming of Islam? Are they against Islam? Are they working to pull the carpet from under the feet of the Muslims? Well, this is our discussion, and we have a number of different ideologies that we're going to be talking about in this fantastic series. To begin with, our very first one, we're going to be looking at fascism. Now, dear viewers, fascism really took its toll from the beginning of World War I, and you can see the development of fascism brought us Hitler, Mussolini, and some people would even say our modern day Donald Trump. But this is the discussion for today. So let me introduce our guest, and then we'll go into our discussion. If I can turn to my guest and welcome Dr. Mahmoud Khalifa, who is a professor of cultural studies, and you've presented the Pool of Ideas before as well. It's a fantastic program. I'd like to welcome you by saying Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for having me once more in this program.
Sure. Doctor, we've got a number of ideologies that we really want to talk about. Can I start off by asking you to just give us an introduction into the importance of studying these ideologies?
The importance of studying ideologies comes from the fact that ideologies are ideas that control how society looks at the world. Okay, for example, Marxism is an ideology, liberalism is an ideology, Zionism is an ideology, and understanding these ideologies is very important, okay? Because the Zionists, for example, if we look at Zionism as an ideology, we can see that the mythological ideas of the Jews about return the promised land, a promised land idea, which is a myth, okay, has had very devastating consequences for Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims. Okay, so ideologies are not just ideas floating in the air. The ideologies are turned by governments and elites into policies, economic and social policies.
Sure. So, Doctor, it's not just a discussion on theoretical issues. We're looking at practical, real issues that have had consequences in the world.
Of course. So that's why I'm saying it is very important to understand the many isms around us, because they affect us.
Okay. So, Doctor, if we can begin with our very first one, which is fascism. Could I ask you to give us a brief introduction into fascism, please?
Yeah, fascism or fascismo is it started in Italy at the hands of Mussolini, the then prime minister, and fascism tends towards a creation of a totalitarian society or form of government that ignore and it basically it's ultra-nationalist in attitude. Okay, it's an exclusionary ideology. It excludes people, it thinks others, okay? So basically, the problem with fascism is that it attacks minorities. It is very dangerous for minorities, okay? So fascism had very intimidating consequences for any society.
Sure.
Because it gives powers to a specific person to speak in the name of the nation, and in that way take decisions that could affect people who are considered others or foreigners or immigrants, okay? And yeah.
So, Doctor, you're talking about immigrants and other races. Am I right to assume then that fascism is connected somehow with racism?
It is not just connected somehow. It is fascism is a form of racist discourse, because it distinguishes it wants, as in the case of Germany, for example, Hitler wanted to create a racist utopia where his superior German race is in control of everything, and a consequence for that racist utopia is that it excluded Jews.
Okay.
And as a result of that, of Hitler's ideology, this utopia had two aims. The first is to control Eastern European countries.
Sure.
And the second was to exterminate Jews as a foreign element. Not just Jews, but there were Muslims, and they were called Musliman. And they found records of people in the Nazi records. And the point was that they viewed them as less than human, as useless eaters.
Okay.
So, and that was not only Hitler's ideology, came from ideas taken from philosophy.
Sure.
For example, Nietzsche's idea about the Superman.
Okay.
So basically, the German race was considered to be super different, okay? And that exclusionary measure had devastating consequences for Jews. And you see the hundreds of thousands of Jews exterminated in gas chambers.
And is that one of the consequences of when people say survival of the fittest, or the white supremacy, for example?
Yeah, this utopia, this Hitler's utopia, or let us say Nazi utopia, was a scientific utopia. It wasn't just a coincidence that at the time the idea of evolution was gaining more, the idea of evolution has reached its maturity in the discourse of the Nazis, who wanted to in the science of what is called eugenics. They wanted a superior race that would rule the world.
Okay, excellent. Doctor, some may say that fascism it relates back to Hitler, and that was a long time ago. But let's look at it today. Is fascism still alive and beating today?
Although fascism technically ended with the defeat of Mussolini and Hitler in 1945, it shows up, it rears its head, it reared its head in the 90s and now in our times, as with the ascension to power of far-right groups and ideologies. That view with fear and consternation people who are not the same, And as an example of this, you find people like Donald Trump using ignorance about Islam as a way of gaining more electoral votes. And as you see, he is gaining more momentum the more he attacks Islam, and the more he promises that he's going to put restrictions on others, Muslims and Latino people from Mexico and so on.
So we're saying that fascism gives rise to right-wing extreme politics.
Yeah, it is basically, the very term of fascism applies basically to those far-right and ultra-nationalist groups, which are anti-immigrant and they are intolerant of difference and so on. So it's the far-right is the heir or representative of fascism.
Doctor, now when we look around the world today, we just need to look into social media or look into the mainstream media, and we find that Muslims, attacks on Muslims across the world now are on the increase, and actually record levels of attacks. Is fascism the cause of Islamophobia?
It is, it's not the cause, but it is the consequence of Islamophobia.
Okay.
So Islamophobia comes first. The discourse of fear around Islam, associating Islam and terrorism, Islam and violence, Islam and oppression of women. All these in the media, of course, in the media discourse, in the political discourse, in the presidential election discourse of some presidential candidates like Donald Trump. The consequence of such discourse of hate is Islamophobia, and as such, the fascism, or this fear of Islam, is translated into acts of violence against Muslims by individual people, or even restrictions by states, like France. France, for example, a couple of days ago, has placed restrictions on wearing burkinis.
Okay.
Burkinis on the beaches in Nice. They threatened to arrest a Muslim woman who was wearing a burkini that covers her body, and she was ordered to take it off or face arrest.
Okay.
So she had to take it off. So basically, a country that prides the world on the idea of liberty and so on is taking an attitude towards women, a restrictive attitude towards women, and imposing, invading, taking an invasive attitude where it invades the privacy of people, sartorial decisions.
But Doctor, some may say that France is a liberal secular state, and these women who are wearing the burkini are showing their religion outwardly. So they're going against the principles of the French state. What would you say to that?
I would say that they're not. The principles of the French state, or even the principles of the founding fathers of America, are ones that prize freedom, personal freedoms. And one of your personal freedoms is your decision to take off your clothes, put on more clothes. It's not something that the state interferes with. Okay. It's a private space which you decide on. Not it has nothing to do with any extremist ideas.
So, Doctor, is it fair to say that then France is edging itself closer and closer to becoming a fascist state?
I wouldn't go to that extreme, but I would say that this way is reminiscent of fascism, of singling out outsiders or people presumed to be outsiders, such as Muslims, who have a different religious practice, singling them out for specific punitive measures.
Okay.
For example, no one puts restrictions on nuns who wear full dress and go to the beach in that dress. No one was concerned about their covering their bodies.
Okay.
So singling out Muslims for specific treatment, considering them as others, this is the anti-immigrant racist ideas that survive and flourish in an atmosphere of intolerance. Okay. That is reminiscent of fascism.
Sure. And Doctor, some will say that there's a lot of criticism of another fascist group like that of ISIS today. Some will say that ISIS forces its women to wear clothes, whereas France is forcing women not to wear clothes. So what would be the difference in the mentality?
There is no difference. It's there is more similarity than difference. It is, in one word, intolerance. Okay. ISIS, which tries to speak in the name of Islam, and it is so far removed from Islam, it kills civilians, Muslims and non-Muslims for no reason, and imposes codes of dress on people. So basically, this imposition of certain ways of dress and so on is a sign of intolerance, of difference. Okay. And the secularist France is as intolerant as ISIS in this regard.
Okay, sure. My next question, which follows up from that, when we look at fascism, is this a religious ideology?
Fascism basically is a secularist ideology.
Okay.
because it talks about the creation of a secularist utopia, such as Hitler's desire to create this Superman society.
Okay.
So basically, fascism is a violent, extremist, ultranationalist ideology that is not related to religion.
Okay, sure. Doctor, we will pick up on that concept in just a few moments. Let's take a short break here, and then when we come back, we'll continue our discussion about fascism. Okay, dear viewers, we're going to take a very short break here. When we come back, join me and the doctor with the second part of this fantastic discussion on fascism. So I'll see you in just a few moments.
Open your eyes to the world of today. Our guide is the Quran, our religion is Islam.
It's calling us to establish this hiwar, this dialogue between ourselves and between the non-Muslims, and to use hikmah. The waves are coming, you're trapped, fitna is coming everywhere. How can I get out of this fitna that I'm in? Send me the rope. Why did Allah send the Quran to you, to all of mankind? As a source of guidance, as a kitab, a blessed book to be reflected upon. And secondly, the ba'ath, the resurrection. Prepare yourself for Yawm al-Qiyamah, when you're going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is aqeedah, this is the core of aqeedah, this is the focus of the Quran. They want these dialects and these slangs to spread so the Arabs themselves can't even understand the Quran properly. This is a choice you have to make now. Because once the angel of death comes to you and takes your soul, there's no turning back, there's no other choice.
Open your eyes to the world of today.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, joining us on this fantastic new program, The Pool of Ideas, where we're looking at a number of different ideologies. And our ideology for today is fascism. Let's go back to our doctor and continue with our questions. Doctor, we were looking at the very fact that fascism is it a religious ideology, or is it a secular ideology?
Fascism and the tendency to use violence to solve problems related to race and so on is the outcome of the secular ideologies. Okay. Basically, Hitler wasn't religious. He was very much influenced by evolution.
Okay.
And the science of eugenics. So pseudoscience, it's not real science. And he was influenced by Nietzsche, a philosopher, this idea of the Superman. So basically, fascism it was the outcome of pseudosciences that put people, human races, on different levels of the ladder of development.
Okay.
And consequently, it meant that there was a superior race like the Germans.
Okay.
So pseudoscience here worked as a justification for the use of excessive power against different people, the Jews, the useless eaters. Okay, so basically the pseudoscience placed people in that way and justified violence.
So it's like political evolution.
Yeah, so basically here the pseudoscience went hand in hand with the use and justification of violence against different races who are thought to be like lower races.
Okay,
it was basically a dehumanizing ideology.
Sure. Doctor, I would like to now talk about a concept that was brought up by an old American President, George Bush, where he talked about Islamofascism. Can I ask you to talk about this, please?
Actually, this is part of a campaign against Muslims to spread hate against Muslims for various reasons. It is to claim that a small percentage of people who commit violence in the name of Islam are representative of 1,600,000,000 Muslims. It is this generalizing attitude
Okay.
So this attempt to try to attach fascism to Islam is going to be unsuccessful, because Islam and Muslims are not engaged in wars like the ones America is engaged in.
Okay.
Attacking Muslims did not kill 2 million Iraqis. It was
Okay.
America who started this war, and it turned out that Saddam Hussein did not have any weapons of mass destruction.
Sure.
It wasn't involved in the 9/11 thing. So basically, we have people who have characterized Muslims in another way that was called Islamikazi.
Okay.
Islamikazi, like the Japanese kamikaze,
Okay.
those suicide bombers. So basically, these attempts to tarnish Islam are basically motivated by a network of Islamophobes who are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to create an atmosphere of fear around Islam for various reasons and uses.
Okay, and Doctor, my follow-up question to that is, with all due respect, George Bush and Donald Trump, some may say, are not the brightest stars in the sky, but yet they have such a large following. How do they manage to convince so many people about their fascist ideologies or mindsets?
Actually, the media is a very dangerous tool in terms of image making. And the media for a very long time, and until the moment we're talking, has and is framing Islam in a negative way.
Okay.
So all the time Islam is associated with violence, it is associated with kidnappings, bombings, suicide bombers, things like that. So basically, and you will find that Muslims are not represented as individuals who have contributed to the world, like we have here the Egyptian, the man who discovered femtosecond.
Okay.
So the achievements of Muslims are never highlighted in the media.
Right.
What is highlighted and stressed is negativities
Okay.
about Islam. So Islam, it becomes an negatively marked in the discourse of the media.
Okay.
And even by associating Muslim practices with violence.
Okay.
Like somebody saying Allahu Akbar and like blowing off some cafe somewhere.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with Islam. We usually say Allahu Akbar during prayers, not during killing and maiming people.
Sure. And Doctor, also talking about not highlighting the achievements of Muslims, in these past few days, like many American Muslims have played a positive role in the Olympics and the sports and brought back many medals, but you don't hear so much of that.
Yeah, that's a problem, because there are certain political and economic interests that need Islam to remain a negative religion in order to justify attacks, wars, measures against Muslims in America and elsewhere. But I mean, this is not going to continue for long as Muslims continue to launch their peaceful jihad of showing the world that we are high achievers in sports, in science, in many fields. We are proud of being American, British, French, and Muslim. We're not just as the media says.
Okay, and also, Doctor, I want to talk about a particular issue which was recently brought up inside the media. When the tragic case of the French priest that was killed in France, it was highlighted as a case of terrorism, and it was taken out in that context. But when the Imam in the United States was killed, it was considered to be an isolated event. Why is there a double standard there?
Because the limited and closed Islamophobic view of things would always mark any Muslim as motivated by hatred and violence to kill and maim, but would consider whites above hate. So basically, if a white man commits a crime, he becomes he's first looked into. We look into his psychological history. We take our time to see the motives. But when a Muslim does anything, we should jump to the conclusion that he is a jihadist. He's a violent killer.
Okay. And Doctor, my follow-up question to that is, now that you've made mention of fascism and explained the dangers of it and the rise of Islamophobia, what advice would you give as an assistant professor to the Muslims around the world? How should they deal with fascism and how should they deal with this Islamophobia?
I think that dealing with Islamophobia and fascism is, has many levels. The first level is to, on the individual level, you should be brave, courageous, not easily intimidated by the media Islamophobic discourse. You try to reach out to your neighbors, tell them about Islam, and act Islamically after all. Okay.
Sure.
So on the individual level, you have to follow to convince people through example, by being a good neighbor.
Okay.
Okay. And the second point is Muslims should not live in a ghetto. Muslims should reach out to other alternative media outlets, create their own media outlets to counter the rising Islamophobia.
Okay.
And basically to educate Americans, British, French about Islam.
Okay.
So our campaign of educating people rather than hating is going, because sometimes it is tempting that when people hate you, you hate them back.
Right.
Which is wrong. This is not Islamic. When you deal with non-Muslims and as a citizen of America or Britain, you have to act Islamically.
Okay.
By being a good neighbor, by reciprocating violence with goodness, as the Quran mentions, "Idfa' billati hi ahsan,
Okay.
فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم."
Okay.
It's like deal with people. You meet wrong with goodness, as if the one who is in enmity with you is your closest friend.
Sure.
And this is a very interesting statement of the right attitude Muslims have to have towards their co-citizens in America and elsewhere.
Excellent. So, Doctor, what you're saying is that we need, as Muslims, we should not ghettoize ourselves, but we should integrate into society and be a part of the society.
Yeah, integrate as Muslims, not integrate, but because the word integration is tricky. Integration has two meanings. Integration by giving up your religion and becoming totally assimilated in the ways of America or Britain.
Okay.
And integration being a good citizen.
Okay.
Without relinquishing, without giving up your Muslim identity.
Sure. Doctor, before we conclude, I would just like to ask you, is there any book or article that you would recommend us to read about fascism so we can truly understand things a lot better?
Yeah, there is a simplified series by Oxford University Press, and it basically, I'll show it here, it basically gives a very simple and straightforward introduction to several notions.
Very nice.
And this is just a very good start. And if you want, of course, to get into more details, you can always check up bigger books.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahmoud. I appreciate you coming and giving us your time. It was a fantastic discussion talking about fascism. I'm sure our next discussion would also be as interesting as this. So I'd like to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And
thank you for having me.
Sure, and conclude by saying Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much. So, dear viewers, we have come to the end of our episode here on Pools of Ideas. Now, the first thing we discussed here is fascism, and we can see the dangers or even the rise of fascism in the modern world today. We can see the reality of that in France, the Burkini. We can see that taking place in America. But just like the doctor said, it's our job as Muslims to show the world that we are loving, we are peaceful, and we want to coexist with them. Not just that, but we want to contribute positively in any society that we live in. Dear viewers, we will conclude on that point for this program, and hopefully in our future episodes we will have another discussion on another ideology. So until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Open your eyes to the world of today. Believe not the lies that they always say. Look for the truth and swallow your pride.